Chapter 32. "Have you heard the news?" asked Lord Maysworth one morning, while bustling into the breakfast room of Lord Gustavus de Montfort. "What is it?" demanded the noble lord, who was sitting at breakfast with his usual satellites. "The King of Ireland has arrived at Oxford with an immense army intending to re-establish Elvira." "Impossible!" "Impossible!" echoed his satellites. "Something must be done," said Lord Maysworth. "Thinking as I think, as I am confident everyone who hears me must think, or at least ought to think," said Lord Gustavus, "no government can be worse than the one we have at present." "The Queen has not performed one of her promises," joins Dr. Hardman, "and her caprice and cruelty are beyond endurance." "Her extravagance is unbounded," said Lord Maysworth. "And her arrogance extreme," rejoined Lord Gustavus. The satellites shook their heads in chorus. "In my opinion," said Lord Maysworth, "we had better seek Elvira and try to proprietate her. She was used to the mild and gentle." "But will she not be too exasperated with our former desertion to listen to us?" asked Dr. Hardman. "I think not," said Lord Gustavus pompously. The result of this conference may be easily imagined. Rosabella found herself deserted, many of who had not the courage to abandon her cause had they not found precedents for their conduct, and fled in suite of the rebel lords. Roderick rapidly advanced, and his army was every day augmented by the discontented English. "I'm lost, Marianne!" cried the Queen, when she found the enemy was within a day's march of her capital. "I'm ruined beyond redemption." "Do not desert yourself," said Marianne, "and you may yet be saved. If you despair, it is a virtual acknowledgment of the weakness of your cause." "What will become of me?" continued Rosabella, wringing her hands. "No earthly help can save me." "But courage may," said the deep voice of Cheops, who had entered the room unobserved. "Ah!" screamed Rosabella. "It is a fiend!" Cheops laughed, and an unearthly sound rang hoarsely in the ears of his auditors. "Speak, demon, or whatever thou art," cried Marianne. "Shall we perish?" "You shall meet with your reward," said the mummy calmly. "Are you satisfied?" "Oh, Rosabella!" screamed Father Morris, rushing into the room in an agony of despair. "Save her! Save my child!" "Your child?" cried Rosabella. "Can it be possible that you are my father?" I am, but fly, fly! And I forgive everything. Let us only fly!" "Alas!" cried Marianne, "he has but too much reason for his agony. The enemy have entered the city." "What will become of us?" ejaculated the friar. "Fiend! Monster! Barbarian!" cried he, addressing Chops, seizing him roughly by the arm. "Deliver us! It was thy cursed counsels which involved us in the ruin! Save us!"
"My counsels that led you to ruin?" returned Cheops with one of his bitter laughs. "Say rather your own passions. Did I urge you to murder Claudia? Nay, did I not save Elvira? Did I not warn you that the throne and misery were inseparably connected? And have not all my promises been fulfilled to the very letter?"
Yes, to the letter," returned Father Morris, "but not in spirit."
"By the sacred hawks of Osiris kept at Edfu, I swore Rosabella would be queen, and you her favorite minister."
"Talk not of what is past," cried the priest impatiently. "Tell me how to act. The foe is at the gates of the palace."
"Did you not say there was a secret passage leading from this chamber?"
There is, cried Father Morris with rapture. We will there lie concealed, and may surprise them.
Cheops laughed. Am I still your foe? He asked with his usual bitterness.
Name it not, cried Father Morris. We have not an instant to lose. Hurry to the subterranean passage. I hear the horses of the enemy in the court of the palace.
Thebes was perforated with passages, yet she is fallen, muttered Cheops, and he followed the friar and Rosabella through the opening into the secret chamber. Marianne joined them, and the spring panel closed. Nothing could be more flattering than the reception Elvira met from her people. Roderick had placed her at the head of his army, and the people hailed her appearance with rapture. Not a blow had been struck, for the army of Rosabella had joined her banners, and Elvira advanced to London without opposition. Too mild and forgiving to indulge a single feeling of revenge, she felt rejoiced that her rival had escaped, and wished no pursuit to be insinuated. Edric, however, was not so quiescent. 1,000 circumstances flashed upon his mind to prove that the creation of Rosabella had long been planned by Father Morris, and he felt convinced that he had been a dupe of the plans they had laid to induce him to quit the kingdom. I will find him, he said, and expose his infamy. He shall not escape me thus. Vain, however, was his search, and he returned to the room so lately occupied by Rosabella, restless and dispirited. Elvira was now in the splendid chamber, surrounded by her friends, and trembling with agitation, was awaiting the expected arrival of her father. "Oh, heavens!" exclaimed she, as the poor old man was led in. "Roderick, my beloved Roderick! Can we save him?" "Alas," returned Roderick, "I fear, but compose yourself, my dearest girl. All may not yet go well." "Where is Elvira, my child, my darling Elvira?" cried the man. "I did not kill her, no," whispered he, drawing near to Roderick. "I killed him, it is true, but it was for her sake. He slandered my child. I could not bear it." Oh, God, cried Elvira. "Have mercy upon him. It breaks my heart to see him thus. Leave us, I implore you," she continued, addressing her friends. "I cannot bear that even you should see the excellence of his melody. Leave him with me, and perhaps my presence may recall his last recollection." Finding opposition only increased her anxiety, her friends at length consented, and Elvira was left alone with her father. Kneeling by his side as he lay stretched upon the sofa, the queen endeavored to console him, but he knew her not, and wrung her heart by calling her vehemently upon Elvira. "If I could see my child," he said, "I could die contented. Call my child. Where is Elvira? Yes, I know she is queen and cannot come to me. Yet I think even a queen might look at her poor old father. I only want her to look at me." Whilst this scene was passing, Rosabella and her friends lay concealed in the secret chamber, and though the movable panel watched everything that passed. "Now is the time," cried Father Morris, when he saw that Elvira, exhausted by her grief, had hidden her face in her hands to indulge her tears unrestrained. "You ensure your own destruction if you kill her," said Cheops.
"I care not," returned Father Morris, and removing the panel he approached. Elvira saw him not, and the shining dagger already was aimed at her breast, when it caught the eye of the maniac, and returning reason flashed through his mind. "Edgar!" he cried, with a piercing scream. "Spare my child!" The cry aroused the friends of Elvira, who had remained in the antechamber, and they rushed in. In an instant the room was crowded. Father Morris was secured, and his confederates, from his having left the panel open, were discovered. "Edgar!" cried the Duke. "Yes, it is Edgar, my brother, my only brother. This is Elvira. She has not fled. I knew she is not. She is safe." "And is it possible," cried Edric, "that you are the Duke Edgar?" "I am that wretch," said Father Morris. "Then Rosabella is my child. For her I've become a wretch, I am. Yet to her I have done my duty, and if she is spared—" "Ah!" cried M. de Malay.
It is. Yet I am not deceived. That is the woman who sold us Pauline.
Who? Which? Exclaimed Edric.
There!
Cried the Swiss, pointing to Marianne.
Marianne!
Exclaimed Edric.
Yes!
Yes, said she. Marianne! He is right. It is I, and now is the moment of my vengeance. Seduced and deserted by this man, pointing at Father Morris. My passions, all in its impetuous, panted my revenge. I instigated him to murder the wife for whom he had abandoned me. I stole his child and sold her to a stranger. I substituted my own wretched offspring, whom I had had by a man he abhorred, in his place.
What? Cried Father Morris, his livid lips quivering with anguish. Is Rosabella not my child?
No, cried Marianne. 20 years ago I sold your child to this gentleman, pointing to M. de Valet. He is a foreigner, and I believed by placing her in his hands you would never see her more.
Then who is my Rosabella?
My child, by your servant Jacques.
Curses on thee, woman! What, have I destroyed myself here, and hereafter the offspring of that wretch? A man I detested, abhorred, despised!
Yes, said Marianne with a fiendish laugh. You abandoned me, and I swore to be revenged. He heard my oath, and by promising to assist me, obtained my consent to be his paramour. By his aid I effected all the rest. He has long been dead, but I still pursued my plan, and when I saw you risking body and soul for Rosabella, I gloried, for I have been revenged.
Fiend! Cried the priest, and rushed upon her before anyone could prevent him, and stabbed her to the heart, and then instantly withdrawing the dagger, buried it in his own bosom.
Still I am revenged.
As heaving a deep sigh, she expired. Father Morris never spoke again. My tale is nearly closed, for dull must be the mind that cannot picture all the rest. The Duke recovered his reason and enjoyed all the happiness his bosom was yet capable of, in witnessing the union of his daughter to Roderick, who he had loved as Henry Seymour, and now adored as the hero of Ireland. He gave Pauline a noble fortune as his niece, and she married Edric, who, in the absence of his brother, took possession of his father's wealth, and fixed his residence in his former dwelling, where, after all his troubles, Dr. Entwerfen found himself comfortably re-established in his ancient chamber, whilst Clara, becoming the bride of Prince Ferdinand, enchanted her mother and secured her own happiness. The coronation of Roderick and Elvira as King and Queen of the United Kingdoms of Great Britain and Ireland was superb, as far as excelled in that which Elvira had previously been an actress. Taught wisdom by experience, however, she no longer placed implicit reliance upon the shouts of applause that followed her footsteps. Yet, even with the reflection that all the promises she received might be evanescence, she could not resist the emotion of pleasure that swelled in her breast when, after the priest had pronounced the nuptial benediction, she walked with Roderick, the chosen of her heart, through a long line of kneeling subjects, and heard every mouth implore blessings on their heads and bestow praises of her choice. Proudly did Elvira look around as she reached the entrance of Westminster Hall, yet ere she entered it, a rustle and bustle in the crowd attracted her attention, and a man, clad like a monk, threw himself before her. Elvira screamed when the man, throwing back his cowl, fixed his heavy eyes upon her and exclaimed, "Do you not know me, Elvira? It was Edmund." "Alas, alas!" cried he. "The demon was right. I trusted my own strength, and I have fallen, miserably fallen. Though I knew not that my ambition was my God, everything else weighed lightly on scale. Yet even when my ambition was gratified, I was wretched, for I loved you, Elvira, even whilst I plotted against you. And as my own heart reproached me, I felt every wrong you suffered more poignantly than you could yourself. My poor father, too, is all over now.
and I'm doomed to bitter expiation of your sins. Bitter indeed, for how far beyond all other sufferings are the never-dying tortures of remorse. One thought alone haunted my mind. One image alone floated before my senses. I could not die till I had obtained your pardon. Pardon me then, Elvira. See, thus humbly at thy feet I implore thy forgiveness, crouching in the dust and bending my neck to be thy footstool. Rise, I entreat you, rise, said Elvira. Be assured I forgive you, nay, that I pity you from my inmost soul. She pities me, cried Edmund. Yet I can bear even this, even pity. I am indeed fallen so low as to be pitied. Yes, yes, I am indeed to be pitied. I do not mean to wound your feelings, returned Elvira. Believe me, Edmund, tell me, what is there I can do for you? Nothing, he cried. The world is nothing for me now. Pity that unhappy woman that was my wife. As for me, forget me. Never, cried Elvira, for never can I forget your disinterested love and your devoted attention. My heart, however, is capricious, and mine, though sensible to your merits, was destined for another. And well does that other deserve your love, for even jealousy itself must own that Roderick is worthy to be your husband. Yes, to him I can resign you. Farewell, Elvira, you shall never see me more. Let my brother take my inheritance. May you be happy. God bless you. God bless you. And starting from his knees, he disappeared before she could reply. The spirits of Elvira were agitated by this event, which threw a damp over the remaining festivities of the day, and trembling and unnerved, she proceeded to the magnificent hall, where a sumptuous banquet was prepared for her reception. For some days after the event, the attention of Roderick and Elvira was occupied in arranging the different affairs of the kingdom, whilst Edric and Pauline, with the old Duke of Cornwall and the Malay and Father Murphy, retired to the house in the former country, where Dr. Entwerfen was already comfortably established. A thousand emotions swelled in the heart of Edric as he approached this venerable mansion, and saw again its well-known turrets peeping through the trees. Strange indeed are the feelings that oppress the mind when the wanderer returns, after a long absence, to the habitation of his forefathers. A mingled crowd of contrary sensations, of disappointed hopes, of undefined fears float through his fancy, and as well-remembered objects recall the visions that formerly delighted him, he starts at the difference the experience of their fallacy has made in himself, and he sighs in vain for a return of the blissful ignorance he formerly despised. All, too, appears changed. As the human mind judges only by comparison, the eyes become dazzled by distant splendors, and that which to the eyes of youth had appeared superb seems to the mature judgment of manhood tame, vapid, and insipid, whilst the imagination which had fondly cherished the favorite dreams of childhood and decked them with the vivid colors of fancy feels disappointed and disgusted, though it scarce knows why, to find the reality so different from the image it had pictured to itself. Such were the feelings of Edric as he entered the grand hall of this residence of his ancestors, and gazed upon the well-remembered faces of the crowd of servants assembled to meet him. At the head of these was Davis, his tall, thin figure waving to and fro, and his long, thin, white hair floating upon his shoulders, and the more spruce and gallant aspects of Abelard and his devoted Eloisa, and the late Mrs. Russell, who had blessed him with the possession of her fair hand a few days before, and now stood blushing and simpering, with all the affected modesty of a bride in 60, to receive the congratulations of those around her. "Welcome, welcome, my dear Edric!" cried Dr. Entwerfen, rushing down the stairs to meet him, his sleeves tucked up and his wig thrown back, in a very experimental philosophic manner. "Rejoice with me, too, for I have recovered my balloon, my darling casset bottles of inflammity, my immortaling snuff, and, more than all, my adorned galvanic battery. Yes, my compendium of science, my epitome of talent, and my most inestimable treasure is safe. Not indeed that which was played in galvanizing the mummy, but its counterpart, its duplicate, its prototype. The mummy came to England, and the balloon being recognized to be mine was placed in my apartment, where it has remained ever since, stowed up in safe but in glorious obscurity, till my return. Oh, that's a clear case, said Father Murphy, and there's no doubt of it. Leaving the delighted doctor to show the treasures of his laboratory to M. de Mallet, Edric retired to his chamber, and after surveying again and again the well-known objects it contained, he hurried to his favorite grove. It's singular how inanimate objects, which have been long unseen, recall the thoughts and train of feelings indulged in one that last beheld them. Thus the house, the groves, the walks, the gardens, and the river recalled all its former longings to Edric's mind, and he again burnt to conceive with the disembodied spirit, as he entered the grove where he had formerly so often ruminated, and indulged dreams wild and improbable as the delusions of delirium. The day was beautiful. It was one of those bright, glowing mornings in April, when dewdrops hang upon every thorn, and when the sun shines brightly through the clear, pure air, and all nature seems awakening to new life and vigor of repose. Edric entered the grove and threw himself upon the very bank where he had reclined only a few months before under such different feelings. The river, the grove, the bank were all the same. He only was changed. And yet, he said, is not my mind still as unsettled as before? Am I not still wandering the labyrinth of doubt, unknowing where to turn, and yet tormented with a restless desire to discover my way? What can have become of the mummy, though I strangely resuscitated? It is strange. Since the restoration of Elvira, it seems to have vanished, and yet all here speak of it as if a living, animated being. Would that I could see it. Oh, Cheops! Cheops! Suddenly a strange, unearthly voice seemed to murmur harshly in his ear. Go to the pyramid. There and only there can thy hopes be gratified. Edric started upon his feet, and no one was near him. Not a sound broke the awful stillness that reigned around, save a gentle rippling of the river that flowed at his feet. He gazed wildly on every side, hoping, yet fearing to behold the ghastly being. He fancied his words had conjured up. It was in vain. No dark figure imposed himself between him and the clear, bright sunlight. No gloomy shadows stretched along the plain. All looked gay as youth and happiness. But still that awful voice rang in his ears and thrilled through every nerve. I will go to the pyramid, he cried energetically. I will enter that horrid tomb. But I will go alone. In pursuance of the sudden but irresistible desire, Edric hastily returned to Egypt, and found that he was called to London by business of importance. To satisfy the enormous curiosity of Pauline, he departed. Indescribable emotions throbbed in his bosom as he took his seat in the stage balloon which was to convey him to Egypt. But when he saw the towers and temples, and all above, the pyramids of this mysterious country lying at his feet, his agitation increased almost to agony. It was with infinite difficulty that he obtained permission again to visit the objects of his journey, as, since the mysterious disappearance of the mummy, the tomb of Cheops had been closed from mortal eyes. The interference of the British consul, however, at length alleviated all objections, and Edric, whose impatience had become absolute torture from the delay, once more entered that awful receptacle of fallen greatness. Scarcely a twelvemonth had elapsed since he had last trodden those solemn vaults, yet what a change had taken place in his destiny! When he considered the number and variety of events that had befallen him, he could scarcely fancy it possible that they could be crowded in so short a space of time, and instead of a year, centuries seemed to have rolled over in his head. His feeling of personal identity seemed confused, his senses became bewildered, and he mechanically followed his conductor almost without knowing whither he was going. At last the guide stopped. This is a tomb of Cheops, he said. I suppose, sir, you will enter it alone.
Edric started. The words of the guide seemed to ring in his ears as the knell of death, and he shuddered as the thought crossed his mind that some horrid and appalling punishment might even now await him for his presumption. Desperately, he snatched the torch from the hands of his guide and advanced alone. Darkly did those gloomy vaults seem to frown at his approach, and fearfully did his footsteps resound as he slowly penetrated their deep recesses. At length he reached the tomb, but its brazen gates were closed, and he attempted in vain to open them. He placed the torch upon the ground, and again tried to unclose the fatal portal. He exerted his whole strength, but still it resisted his efforts. Rendered desperate, he threw himself against the gates with utmost superhuman force. Suddenly a hollow sound murmured through the caverns, and a current of wind rushed by with a mighty and resistless fury. The brazen gates flew open with a fearful clang, and the torch fell and was extinguished. The next moment the sculptural lamp shot forth a faint gleaming light, which brightened to degrees into a steady flame. Most heavenly music sounded upon the ear, dying gradually away from murmurs, soft as an Ethiopian harp. The brilliant light of the lamp now glowed with noonday brilliance and showed distinctly every corner of the fatal chamber. Edric looked timidly around and shuddered as well-remembered object met his eyes. But what was his horror and surprise when, glancing at the marble sarcophagus of Cheops, he beheld the gigantic figure of the mummy standing erect beside it. It was again simply wrapped in the garments of the tomb, and its glassy eyes and rigid features and statue-like form chilled Edric to the heart. He looked at it a few moments in silence, till it raised its arm and seemed to address him. When shrinking back with indescribable horror, he uttered a faint shriek and hid his face in his hands. "Why dost thou tremble?" asked the mummy in his deep, hollow voice that thrilled through Edric's very soul. "Didst thou not come here to seek me, and dost thou shudder to behold my form? I am now before thee. Ask what thou wilt. I will promptly reply. Why art thou silent? Why does thy heart seem to wither in my presence? Alas, alas, is no mortal to be found free from my debasing influence of fear. Thou art called bold, courageous, and noble. Thou hast dared to soar above thy fellow men. Thou hast ardently wished to see me. Behold, I am here, and now, weak, fearful, and inconsistent as thou art, thou shunnest my approach." "I do not shun thee," said Eric, removing his hands, and endeavoring to look calmly on the fearful thing before him, though the flesh seemed to quiver on his bones with the effort. "I do not shun thee, but the nerves will shrink through my mind be firm. I did wish to see thee, for ardently do I desire to know the secrets of the tomb." Cheops burst into one of his fearful laughs. "Weak, silly worm, are you not satisfied then? How would this knowledge avail you? Has anything but misery attended your former researches? And can anything but misery attend to the knowledge you now covet? Learn wisdom by experience. Seek not to pry into secrets denied to man. If you wish still, however, to be resolved of your doubts, behold me ready to satisfy them. But I warn you, wretchedness will wait upon my words." "Then I no longer seek to hear them, for, even weak as you esteem me, I can learn wisdom from experience. Thus, then, I tear the tormenting doubts that I have long haunted me from my mind and bid them farewell forever." "It is well," said Cheops, his eyes beaming with joy. "Then my task is accomplished. I've found at last a man, a reasonable man. I honor you, for you can command yourself. And now you may command me.
I do not wish it, said Edric.
Have you no curiosity?
Asked the mummy with a ghastly smile. No, returned Edric, unless it be that I would fain know your history and the meaning of the sculptures on your tomb.
What are they?
Demanded Cheops. A youthful warrior bearing off a beautiful woman in his arms, whilst an old man laments bitterly in the distance.
I was the warrior,
said Cheops.
And the beautiful female was Arsinoe. I loved her, and to gratify my impetuous passion, I tore her from the arms of her father by force.
The warriors afterwards contending with the old man who falls beneath his blows.
He did, cried Cheops. He died by my hand, and eternal misery haunts me for the deed.
And this old man was
my father,
cried the mummy, writhing in agony. And Arsinoe,
my sister, my own beloved sister.
A solemn pause followed his speech, for Edric was too much shocked to speak again to the awful being who had avowed such crimes, and upon whose face were traced passions too horrible to be imagined. After a short silence, Cheops again exclaimed,
Yes, I see your horror, and it is just. But think you that I do not suffer. Know that a fiend, a wild, never-dying fiend, rages here,
continued he, pressing his hand upon his breast.
It gnaws my vitals. It burns with unquenchable fire, never-ceasing torment. Permitted for a time to revisit Earth, I've made use of the powers entrusted to me to assist the good and punish the malevolent. Under pretense of aiding them, I gave them counsels which only plunged them yet deeper in destruction. Was the evil that my advice appeared to bring upon the good was only like a passing cloud before the sun. It gave luster to the success that followed. My task is now finished. Be happy, Edric, for happiness is in your power. Be wise, for wisdom may be obtained by reflection. And be merciful, for unless we give, how can we expect mercy? Rely not on your own strength. Seek not to pry into mysteries designed to be concealed from men, and enjoy with comforts within your reach. For know that knowledge, above the sphere of man's capacity, produces only wretchedness, and that to be contented with our station and to make ourselves useful to our fellow creatures is the only true path to happiness.
The mummy ceased to speak, and his features, which had appeared wild and animated during his conversation with Edric, became fixed, and an earthly lustre had flashed from his eyes, faded away, and gave place to glossy deadness. His limbs became rigid, as the light of the lamp gradually sunk into distinctness. The ghastly form of the mummy seemed rapidly changing into stone. Edric felt that for a moment, when it was possible for him to hold communion with the strange being, was rapidly passing away, and almost shrieked as he exclaimed, "One question! One more ere it be too late!" The mummy feebly raised his languid eyelids, but Edric felt his blood freeze at the unnatural glare With a violent effort, however, he roused himself to speak. Was it a human power that dragged you from your tomb?
The power that gave me life could alone restore it,
replied the mummy in slow, measured accents, as it sank gradually back into its former tomb. Edric shuddered and involuntarily rushed forward, but the mummy no longer lived or breathed. Cold, pale, and inanimate it lay, as though its sleep of 2,000 years had never been broken. Oblivion laid him down upon his hearse, and no mortal evermore could boast of holding converse with the mummy. The end.